Zheng He Expeditions, podcast by Fenil Patel, period, 4th. The Ming dynasty from 1368 to 1644 was a Chinese dynasty with a Chinese imperial family. They were different from the dynasties that came before the Ming, such as the Mongols, Yuan dynasty, or the dynasty of Chinggis and Kublai Khan. Continuing, the third emperor of the Ming dynasty was Yongle Emperor, who took power, continuing to strengthen the Chinese state. However, he had basically rebuilt the Great Wall of China and established a new capital named Beijing. Furthermore, Yongle was particularly aggressive and personally led major campaigns against the Mongolian tribes to the north and west. He also wanted other countries to be aware of China's power and wanted the society to perceive his empire as a strong country in which he had believed it had been in earlier Chinese dynasties such as the Han and Song dynasty. He also revived the traditional tribute system. These countries regularly gave gifts of tribute in exchange for certain benefits such as military posts and trade. On the other hand, for ocean expeditions, he decided that this time China should make use of its extremely advanced technology and all the state had to offer. Conversely, lavish expeditions should be took place in order to overwhelm foreign peoples and to convince them beyond any doubt about Ming power. For this special purpose, he chose one of his trusted generals, a man that he had known since he was young, which is Zheng He. Additionally, Yongle also wanted to expand Chinese influence overseas. As a result, a series of ocean voyages were sponsored by him under the command of Zheng He himself. Overall, the main purpose of the voyages were to increase the flow of tribute to China and to impose imperial control over foreign trade with China, and to impress foreign peoples with the power and basically let the Ming dynasty restore to China. Between 1405 and 1433, Zheng He led a large fleet on 7 voyages to Southeast Asia, India, Arabia, and lastly Africa. Through these numerous voyages, he met with foreign rulers and had brought back exotic goods such as zebras, giraffes. On the other hand, Zheng He was born to a Muslim family in the Southwest Union province. When he was 10 years old, he was captured by soldiers sent there by the first Ming emperor planning on subduing the South. He was sent to the capital to be trained in military ways. Growing up to be a great man, when the emperors needed a trustworthy ambassador familiar with Islam, he naturally picked the talented court Zheng He. Because the Yongle Emperor wanted to impress the Ming power upon the world and show off China's resources and importance, he gave orders to build larger ships than were necessary for the voyages such as expeditions of Zheng He. Continuing, the construction of the specialist treasure ships were being built with ships over 400 feet long, 160 feet wide, with 9 masts, 12 sails, and 4 decks, which were large enough to carry 2,500 tons of cargo each, and armed with dozens of small cannons. Accompanying those ships were to be hundreds of smaller ships, some filled with water, and other carrying troops or horses or cannons, and others with gifts of silk, porcelains, tea, and ironworks that would impress the leaders of civilizations. Before Zheng He began his voyages, he had once said, "We have beheld in the ocean huge waves like mountains rising sky high. We have set ice on barbarian regions far away hidden in a blue transparency of light vapors, while our sails, loftily unfurled like cloud day and night, continued their course rapid like that of a star, traversing the savage waves as if we were treating a public thoroughfare." This was the most famous quote ever acknowledged of Zheng He. Lastly, the 7 voyages had begun, with the first expedition being set between 1405 and 1407, which included 317 ships, including as many as 60 huge treasure ships and nearly 28,000 men. In addition to the thousands of sailors, builders, and repairmen for the trip, there were also soldiers, specialists, medical personnel, astronomers, and scholars of foreign ways, especially in Islam. The ships had stopped in Champa, known as Central Vietnam, and Siam, known as Thailand, and then to island Java, to points along Straits of Malacca toward the main destination of Cochin and the Kingdom of Calcutta on the southwestern coast of India. On his return of the first expedition, Zheng He had brought down an empire uprising in Sumatra, bringing the chief back to Nanjing for punishment. In that same year, the second expedition lasted from 1407 to 1409, which took 68 ships to the court of Calcutta to attend the inauguration of a new king. However, this expedition did not create a big impact, but Zheng He had organized this expedition through he did not actually lead it in person. Concerning the third voyage, Zheng He had commanded it from 1409 to 1411 with again 48 large ships and 30,000 troops, visiting many of the same places as on the first voyage, but also traveled to Malacca on the Malay Peninsula and Ceylon known as Sri Lanka. When fights broke out there between his forces and those of a small kingdom, Zheng He had to put down the fighting, captured the king, and brought him back to China, where he was released by the emperor and returned home. Continuing, the fourth voyage from 1413 to 1415 had made expeditions even more interesting. This time, he had visited much of the same sites. In addition, Zheng He controlled his 63 ships and over 28,000 men to Hormuz on the Persian Gulf. The main chronicler of the voyages was a 25-year-old Muslim translator Ma Huan, who joined Zheng He on his trip. On the way, Zheng He stopped in Sumatra to fight on the side of a removed sultan, bringing him back to Nanjing for execution. Towards the end of the expedition, the fifth voyage was from 1417 to 1419, which was primarily a return trip for the 17 heads of state from South Asia. They had made their way to China after Zheng He's visits to their homelands in order to present their tribute at the Ming court. On this trip, Zheng He ventured even further, first to Aden at the mouth of the Red Sea and then on the east coast of Africa, stopping at the city-states of Mogadishu and Douala, which is today's Somalia, and Malinda, which is present-day Kenya. He was frequently met with hostility, but this was easily subdued. However, many ambassadors from the countries visited and came back to China with him. As the sixth expedition started in 1421 to 1422, 41 ships sailed to the previously visited Southeast Asia and Indian ports and stops in the Persian Gulf, the Red Sea, and the coast of Africa, principally in order to return 19 ambassadors to their homeland. Zheng He returned to China after less than a year, sending his fleet onward to pursue several separate planned routes, with some ships going south towards Sofala, present-day Mozambique. Lastly, the seventh and final voyage was 3 years, starting in 1431 and ending in 1433. This voyage was sent out by the young Li's emperor's successor, his grandson named Exunde Emperor. This expedition had more than 100 large ships and over 27,000 men. And this voyage visited all the important parts in the South China Sea and Indian Ocean, as well as Aden and Hormuz. One supported voyage had traveled up the Red Sea toward Jeddah, a few hundred miles from the holy cities of Mecca and Medina. Although, regarding this return trip in 1433, Zheng He had sadly died and was buried at sea. While his official grave still stands in Nanjing, China, where his hair and pair of shoes were buried, Zheng He was nearly forgotten in China until recently. He was a great man of fame among Chinese communities, particularly in Southeast Asia, where to this day he is celebrated and respected as a god. After the expedition ended, Chinese merchants continued to trade in Japan and Southeast Asia, but imperial officials destroyed most of the nautical charts that Zheng He had carefully planned and gave up any plans to maintain a Chinese presence in the Indian Ocean. Yet, Zheng He's voyages demonstrated clearly that China could exercise military, political, and economic influence throughout the Indian Ocean basin. Hope you enjoyed this video and it was very informative. Thank you for watching.